Hey up guys! So, continuing the Marvel movie marathon after a 6-month hiatus. Yep, it's been that long. I got to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and then I got distracted by other work like the London Film Festival, my Oscars coverage. And yeah, these Marvel movies, they're not really a big hitter in terms of views on my channel, so it's easy to get despondent about pouring your time and energy into a series which isn't getting a lot of clicks. But I did want to come back and complete it because I don't like the feeling of unfinished projects, because I did set out to review all 23 movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, and I've only got 4 to actually go, so I figured I might as well just, blast through them now, because the end is in sight of this playlist. We're picking up where I left off. We're capping off Phase 2 today, which is Avengers Age of Ultron. Just a quick heads up, this review does contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie and don't want it spoiled, now's your time to leave. If you guys are enjoying this vid, do help me out by hitting that thumbs up button. If you want more movie, TV, and Oscars-related content, consider hitting subscribe. And if you want to follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, all those links in that video description down below. This is going to be a weird one to talk about now, because if I'd have actually reviewed this film back in October like I had intended, the end product would have been very different. I probably would have been fanboy gushing in the review, talking about how much I love Joss Whedon for the shows he created, Buffy, Firefly, Angel, and how amazing the first Avengers film is. I still think the first Avengers film is one of the best in the whole MCU. It's definitely in my top 3. While I certainly wasn't as big of a fan of Joss Whedon's sequel, Age of Ultron, as I was Avengers Assemble, I probably still would have gushed over him in that video because of how much I loved and respected his work. However, it's come to light in the past few weeks that Joss Whedon has been accused of misconduct and abusing his power on the sets of his previous work. Actress Charisma Carpenter, who played Cordelia Chase in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, has come forward with some awful claims about the man I once idolized. And so many other actresses that were on Buffy, including Michelle Trachtenberg, Amber Benson, and Buffy herself, Sarah Michelle Gellar, have essentially confirmed that these claims are to be believed. I 100% stand with Charisma Carpenter on the matter. Joss needs to be held accountable for his actions and past behavior. I've been thinking about doing a video essay on my channel about the downfall of Joss Whedon and why the allegations of his misconduct is actually more disappointing and upsetting than, say, Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey. I mean, it's all bad, but why Joss's demise of his character, it hurts me great deeply because of what his work meant to myself and so many women out there and LGBTQ people. If that's a video you would like to see me do, please do let me know in the comment section down below and I will try and get around to it at some point. But yes, I will try not to let my feelings about how I feel about Joss interfere with the movie review of Avengers Age of Ultron, because you have to try and separate the art from the artist in this case. So that's all I'm going to say on the matter for now, but yeah, let's talk about Avengers Age of Ultron. The plot of Avengers Age of Ultron sees Tony Stark still reeling from the events of the first Avengers movie when the alien Chitauri army invaded New York. He's very nervous for Earth, so Tony wants to create a program which will essentially put a suit of armor around the world. However, this program, which he calls Ultron, becomes self-aware, and then the Avengers must face their biggest foe since Loki, which is Ultron, who is essentially a sentient robot who plans mass extinction. I'm gonna say this, I do agree that I think that Avengers Age of Ultron is the weakest of the 4 Avengers movies, but I don't think it's a bad film or even an average film. It's actually a really good film. It's just the issues in this film are more noticeable than the other 3 Avengers movies. So let's talk good and bad. What does this film get right? Firstly, I really enjoyed the character development of the main cast in this film. I particularly loved the party scene at the beginning of the film where they're all just hanging out, trying to lift Thor's hammer. It's a very charming scene, seeing all these legendary superheroes just hanging out like they're teenagers in somebody's basement. Quick question, because I've had actual debates with my friends about this. When Cap tried to lift Thor's hammer and you see it move an inch, do you think Cap was already worthy and could pick it up but decided not to for Thor's sake? Or do you think he wasn't worthy at the time and just moved it an inch because of his natural strength, and he became worthy later in the MCU and could summon the hammer. So what do you guys think? Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye gets the most noticeable character expansion. We all knew from the first Avengers movie that he was the least developed and therefore the least interesting. And Joss knew that, and he went to great efforts to rectify that issue in this film. Hawkeye is far more integral to the plot in this film. He also has more agency in this outing because he's not a puppet who's being mind controlled like he was in the first film. Also, he's funnier in this film. He definitely gets some of the best lines, and we also learn that he is a family man as well. They really did a good job of texturizing him as a character. He gets a great scene in the Sokovia battle where he gives a little pep talk to Wanda about her being an Avenger now, and it's just that moment where you realize what Hawkeye actually brings to the team. He brings that human heart element to the group. So yeah, I've got to give them props for redeeming the character of Hawkeye. I'm gonna go on record and say that I actually liked the relationship dynamic between Natasha and Bruce. I know not everybody liked it because it never actually amounts to anything in the later MCU movies, but I liked what Joss was trying to set up, these two outcasts finding common ground within each other and forming a bond. I liked that she had that whole Hulk whisperer talent, how she could change the Hulk back into Bruce just by giving him a little stroke of his hand. It's definitely one of the most frustratingly unexplored plot threads the MCU has ever had, because it just doesn't go anywhere. And I think James Spader was a perfect pick for Ultron. Spader brings his trademark intensity to the role. He's got a voice like sandpaper, but despite Ultron being a robot, he's full of character, he's got a sense of humor, and he's very charismatic. The problem with Ultron, though, is that firstly, he's a CGI robot character. Because he's been made via a computer, we don't have the same emotional connection or sense of menace that we get with Loki or Thanos. And I know Thanos was made by mocap and CG, but the technology came a long way in the space of those movies. And secondly, there's too many new characters competing for resources in this film. Ultron, the twins, Ulysses Claw, Vision. There's just not enough screen time to give them all their dues. All of these new additions are underdeveloped, particularly Ultron. Joss juggled all the plot threads and characters so masterfully in the first film, but in Avengers Age of Ultron, he was given 6 more things to throw into the mix, and you can tell when watching that his focus was spread too thin. We don't even get important scenes like seeing Ultron get his body made of vibranium. It's just not as tidy as the first film. The great thing about the first Avengers film is that it works really well as a standalone film. Like, you can watch that film by itself without having to watch the first 5 solo films. And also, they weren't sure if the first Avengers movie was even going to work. Like, nothing like this had ever been attempted before in the landscape of cinema. So they weren't obsessed with setting up future plot points or sequels. It's a very self-contained movie. However, Age of Ultron reeks of studio interference. You can tell the studio were forcing Joss to include all these tie-ins to future movies, some of which don't amount to much, like Thor's skinny dip scene, which I'm convinced was only added just so they could get the obligatory shot of Chris Hemsworth with his top off for the trailer. And on a rewatch, it just feels so unnecessary, this scene. Same with some of the action scenes. When it comes to the action, it certainly does have its moments where it feels very epic. It definitely echoes the same style of the first movie with those long takes and some of those shots which look like window panes you'd see in a comic book. But not all of the action actually services the plot. The fight between Hulk and Hulkbuster serves absolutely no function to the plot. It's just there as fan service, as one of those hypothetical fanboy questions like who would win in a fight between Iron Man and Hulk. Don't get me wrong, it is a fun sequence to watch, but it doesn't do anything to enrichen the story as a whole. As for other negatives, the editing is a bit patchy in this film. You can tell there was a lot left on the cutting room floor. Also, there's a lot of blatant product placement in this film, which drives me nuts. Also, Black Widow becomes a damsel in distress in the third act. And I know Joss Whedon was just trying to work around the fact that Scarlett Johansson was pregnant at the time, but it still does kind of damage the film a little bit. So let's ask them questions. Firstly, would I recommend it or skip it? I'm gonna say recommend. Despite its many flaws, it's still a pretty good watch. It's just good popcorn entertainment. So yeah, I'd recommend it. And last question, what's gonna give it out of 10? It's still the weakest Avengers film in my opinion, but it's still a good watch. So I'm going to give Avengers Age of Ultron a score of 6.5 out of 10. But as always guys, just one bloke's opinion. Love to hear from you. What do you guys think of Avengers Age of Ultron? Where does it rank for you in all 4 of the Avengers movies? Whatever you have to say, let me know in that comment section down below. If you've enjoyed this video, help me out by hitting that thumbs up button. If you want more movie, TV and Oscars related content, don't forget to click subscribe, and if you want to follow me on social media, all those links in that video description down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. For more things related to movies, TV, and popcorn culture, I'm Luke Airfield, and I'll see you next time.